Last time I left off on a kind of a try not to panic, try to keep calm sort of zone. So I got to a point where there's a strong implication I need to do a present because I've pressed all the statements and that has not progressed the plot, leaving present as like the remaining option. And have like no clue. I know what essentially we have to argue is that because the rose was on the other side of the street, it could have somehow things could have happened on the other side of the street and things could have gotten thrown out the window anyway and fallen there, as if somehow the rose was thrown out the window, as if somehow the rose got taken all the way up into the Garadeb's like apartment and then thrown out from there. Of course, it would be an identical rose as opposed to like say the same one, unless Mr. Garadeb walked in with it and then Mrs. Garadeb was like, "Where'd you get that rose from?" Then there's way more to that story. Anyway, but like, how do we present on what? I don't know. So I'm gonna press everything again actually and see if at the end of one of these presses we get a, oh, this statement seems kind of odd kind of thing.
Hold it!
This is gonna be a bit tedious. Yeah, what we have to present is very likely to be one of the new things, so it's maybe perhaps that. Okay, so he didn't point out anything strange about that statement, but it does suggest that what you present could potentially be the manual. Okay. As soon as we have to cough. Okay, press this just to see what he says at the end. They don't open fully, that's correct. I've seen this. Yeah, they land right where the rose would have been picked up. Correct. So let's ignore that for now. Let's do the alternate route on this press, which I believe I've already done, because I've already done all these routes. I'm just repeating myself. Trying to find hints. Okay, I'll do this. Red Zykes marks on the map.
Excuse me.
This would seem necessary, right? So I never understood because that was because the murder where the victim hasn't quite died yet happened after the meal, didn't it? There's no hints at the end there.
Hold it!
Okay, so we know we definitely, on that third statement, we definitely do not present. Okay.
Hold it!
Nothing was removed from it. Except the flower, right? Okay, so I present on the last statement, because that's the one where Ryonosuke says it seems off to him. Did not take my eye off the crime scene for a moment. Nothing strange to report on that front, sir. Okay, so what do we present on this? The armband. I think we can roll that out because it has nothing to do with the case. A street map of the local area showing locations that are relevant to the case. Let's examine. Okay, so you have your books, Bourbon books, the Garadev's lodging, and the crime scene. We don't have the location of the rose on the map, though. Okay. This theoretically could be it, because we're gonna say nothing strange happened, but that book ended up there. So, however, I'd be looking for something more direct than that. The pavement where the victim was found lies just outside Constable Beat's beat, the border which runs down the middle of Briar Road. Now this makes sense because this is motivation for Mr. Beat to not mention things happening on his beat. Like, to make it look like the crime happened off his beat when it actually happened on his beat, right? However, this isn't really direct evidence. We're not pointing out a contradiction here, right? The only thing, like, we're saying, we're saying there's something strange. There is something strange to report, and that thing that's strange is that it didn't happen on your beat. That's not really very direct, right? So, and it's not my first choice. The knife, nothing strange was about the knife. He had the picture of the book. The book, of course, that's the thing strange. But we've already, like, talked about it at length during the press, right? So it's not like we presented again would be redundant. For some reason I want to present the rose. I might lose health on that, and then if I do, then I'll just try presenting the book or something. I don't know.
Objection!
The music stopped. That helped. You know, the music doesn't always stop when you get it correct, but it's like a good indicator. Like, it like makes you feel like you've done it. You claim, Constable Beat, there was nothing to report on the 15 or so minutes you were guarding the scene. But that cannot be. Hey, sorry that took so long. That was a little bit tough for me to kind of work out, but it's not, like, super obvious. What do you mean to say? You have to, like, actually know how the game works. In your testimony just now, Mrs. Beat, you explained to the court that when you arrived back at the scene of the crime with the police assigned to that beat, the bouquet you had dropped at the victim's side was no longer anywhere nearby.
Objection!
Yes, on the opposite side of Briar Road, where the victim was attacked. But considering the size of that meager bouquet, it is a single sorry bloom. If a single sorry bloom can be so described. No doubt it was blown in the wind across the street, back into the gutter where it belongs. Meager. But if that were the case, why did Constable Beat not testify to the fact? Because that's not worth testifying to. It was just the wind. No one else approached the scene, and nothing was removed from it. Constable Beat swore to that on Scotland Yard's honor. But the bouquet belonged to me. It has nothing to do with the case. That's why Rolly didn't mention it, I'm sure. No, because sadly it's not only your bouquet we're talking about here. More than one thing in this case is mysteriously the wrong way round. What are you talking about? Think about it. Besides Mrs. Beat's bouquet, there's Mr. Garredeb's book. Mr. Garredeb's copy of The Lion's Pride, which was thrown out the window by his wife, would have struck the pane of the casement window and landed here on the west side of the street. Oh, we're gonna say Constable moved the body to the other side of the street, are we? And yet, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road, in the victim's hand. Meanwhile, according to the testimony we've heard, Mrs. Beat's bouquet should have been dropped here at the scene of the crime on the east side of the street, but in fact, was actually found here on the opposite side of the road, in front of Mr. and Mrs. Garredeb's house. There's no logical explanation for those things, unless somebody deliberately moved them. We check the time here. Okay, we've done gone pretty short, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a pause of encoding. I have to deal with something, and then try to come back to this. This animation will have a little, like, stutter in it as a result. And I'm back. So let's keep going with this. What are you trying to say? The way you're talking, it sounds like you think my Rolly's done something wrong. Which would be correct. Don't you listen to a word that scrawny lawyer says. Wittering on about books and bouquets. Why should we care? It's nitpicking. That's what it is. Well, that's suspicious of you. Oh good, Mrs. Garredeb's come round. You might call it nitpicking, Mrs. Garredeb, but deliberately meddling with the scene of a crime is criminal offense. It's called, tampering, Mr. Naruhodo. But the person responsible for this tampering cannot admit to it, for a very subtle but compelling reason. Tampering? You've barely heard the term before. Tell us, my learned friend, who would possibly have had cause to carry out such an elaborate deception? Yes, there is someone who tampered with the scene of the crime that evening. All the evidence and all the testimony points to that one particular person. Counsel, I must demand that you substantiate this conjecture. Who are you saying is responsible for tampering with the scene of the crime? Well, it's Rolly, and if I miss, then it's Mrs. Garredeb, but it's probably Rolly.
Take that!
Well, it went mute, so that's good. Obviously, there's only one person it could have been. Constable Rolly Beat. It was you. What, a policeman? A member of Scotland Yard? What nonsense, why would my Rolly do something like that? There's no one straighter than my husband. Nobody works more tirelessly for the people of London. Oh, he's very tiredful. Mrs. Beat, You said in your testimony that your husband asked you to go to a nearby police box to fetch the officer on duty. The 15 minutes that you were absent from the scene is the only opportunity anyone had to tamper with it. You're making it up. It's all nonsense. It's all lies. What about the Japanese man with the whiskers? I bet it was him. He did it. If that were true, Constable Beat would have seen him do it. Oh. And forgive me for pointing it out, but when you dropped your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, it was after the defendant had fled the scene. Well. First, you make accusations about the landlord and his wife, and now you incriminate a policeman as well. But your accusations lack one very important thing. You claim the crime scene was tampered with, but there is only one reason anyone would commit such a reckless crime, to hide something. That's right, he's right. But my husband and I just happened to be there, that's all. So why would we have anything to hide? It doesn't make sense. You've offered no motive for this alleged tampering. And until you do, your accusations are nothing but empty threats. Constable B had a very good reason for wanting to tamper with the scene of the crime. That's the key to this entire affair. Mr. Naruhodo, have you managed to solve this mystery? Counsel, you have made a very serious accusation against the London police officer. If you are mistaken, I am sure I need not point out that your reputation as a lawyer will be irrevocably damaged. Which means what exactly, Judge? With that stark warning in mind, you will now explain to the court the motive for this alleged tampering. That's like empty words. There will be serious consequences. Yes, my lord. Constable Beat's motive for tampering with the crime scene was to hide. He wanted to hide where the victim fell, because he wanted to make it look like it was on someone else's beat. There the victim fell to the ground. That was what this Bobby had to cover up at all costs. What? Where the victim fell? You mean where she was attacked? What are you talking about? We told you at the very start, didn't we? On the pavement of Briar Road. We saw it happen, remember? It was right here, as if anyone didn't already know. That's certainly what everybody has been led to believe. But in fact, that isn't where the victim was stabbed at all. What? What? I'm beginning to wonder where this tumultuous trial will end, counsel. If that's your assertion, then the court is dying to know, my friend. Where are you proposing that the crime scene actually took place that evening?
Take that!
But that's on the opposite side of the road. I don't understand. On the evening in question, Mr. Garadev's book fell directly down from the open window above, and your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, never moved at all. What did move, what did 360, was the scene of the crime itself. Good gracious.
Objection!
Perhaps you haven't been listening to the ample testimony the court has heard. But these witnesses both saw the moment the attack took place. That's right, I saw it with my own eyes. It was 5 o'clock in the evening and already dark. There was a typical London fog on the ground. When you saw the incident unfold and ran to the victim's aid. That was actually on the west side of Briar Road. No, that's not true. It can't have been. Constable B then arranged for you to be absent for a while by sending you for help. And during the 15 minutes you were away, he transplanted the crime scene. He moved all the things shown in this print, the victim herself, the 4 books. He moved everything, in fact, to the pavement on the east side of Briar Road. Extraordinary! But Constable overlooked one thing. What did he overlook? The bouquet, I presume. Exactly. The prosecution told the court just a few minutes ago that the discovery of the rose bouquet, Lord Van Zyke said it wasn't noticed until the morning, as it lay where the street lamps cast no light. Yes, it couldn't have been seen in the dark, obviously. Which is why it was only the bouquet that was found in its original position on the pavement on the west side of Briar Road. And that is the defense's theory about what really happened that evening. How do you respond? Constable Rolly Beat. I wasn't listening. Well, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to nod off again, but I haven't slept properly in a month. Did I miss anything important? Oh, Rolly, it isn't true, is it? What the lawyer said is all lies, isn't it? I know it is because you're the most upstanding righteous man I know. I had a dream. Terrible dream. All the things I did that night. Everything come out. Everything exposed. Only it seems it wasn't a dream at all. Order! 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 What on earth is the meaning of all this? Rolly, why would you do something like this? Moving a corpse is a criminal offense, isn't it? Well, she wasn't a corpse. Wishing the victim dead should be one too. Constable, explain yourself. Why would you do this? As a respected member of Scotland Yard, your duty is to protect the good people of London Town. I can't say, sir. What? I really am ever so sorry about all this. For damaging the Yard's reputation, for everything. I have a possible explanation. I'm gonna skewer you with it. For why, on that particular evening, Constable Beat felt compelled to move the scene of the crime. I can think of one reason. What, how could you possibly know? You, a foreigner, presuming to understand the mind of a Scotland Yard policeman. There's people, man. And yet, Lord Van Zyke's, it is this foreigner who has uncovered the startling truth of the matter thus far. I believe it would be beneficial to the court to hear this extraordinary young lawyer's theory. Counsel for the defense, if you please. Yes, my lord. Now then, I think you had better show us some evidence. At once, my lord. England, Japan, it makes no difference where you come from, human emotions are the same. And I think I have a fairly good idea of the feelings behind this man's actions. What gives away the motive for Constable Beat's unthinkable actions? Yeah, this.
Take that!
Oh, I messed up. Great. Sorry to say that I don't, counsel.
Objection.
I would like to know, my learned friend, is the motive for your unthinkable actions. By which I mean, that abysmal response. Okay. I heard you muttering to yourself before, you see. Now then, I think you had better show us some evidence. Once, my lord. Okay. Try this.
Take that!
Okay. It's the right idea, but just the wrong specific piece of evidence. I realize that I'm a foreigner in this land, and I have only just arrived from Japan. Which is why all this information about London's so-called bobbies is completely new to me. I've learned that, though honorable, patrolling the beat is the most demanding work in the world, for example. Keeping the peace, looking after the citizens on his beat in all kinds of ways. There's no doubt that the young Bobby is charged with a great deal to do each day, certainly. But for Constable Beat, the day in question was special. Special? How? On account of this bouquet, my lord. Oh yes, it was our very first wedding anniversary. Constable Beat had worked so hard to be able to afford the simple gift for his wife, and was so looking forward to taking her out for a celebratory meal. When he and Mrs. B stumbled upon a crime along Briar Road. When they saw that shadowy figure through the fog collapse on the pavement ahead of them, what must have gone through the man's mind? But so, just on that one particular day, I was looking forward to celebrating my wedding anniversary. Mrs. B put up with a lot being married to a Bobby like me. I wanted to show my dear wife how much I care. This is the warrant card that Constable Beat offered to lend me earlier. Inside, among the rules for patrolling policemen, it says, when a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Aha. Constable Beat. Is that or is that not the reason why you moved the whole scene of the crime that day? Yes. Everything you said, it's alright. So that's it. It was all to do with the boundary of your beat. Oh. Exactly. To summarize, the incident actually occurred on Constable Beat's beat. Good gracious. Constable, do you realize the gravity of what you have done? It was the first time since I became a copper that I'd ever cursed God. Stay close to me, Pat. The criminal could still be lurking somewhere. As he ran over to the scene, I had every intention of doing my duty as a police officer. Got to report this to the station as quickly as possible. But then it dawned on me. I realized there we were, where the victim was lying, and what that meant for me. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with its initial investigations and help detectives. Why here? Why did this have to happen here? And why tonight of all nights? Why? It's a copper's job to guard the scene of the crime, so I told Pat she'd have to go to the nearest police box and fetch whoever was on duty there. It was then when I opened my mouth to speak. It just came out. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of my own mouth. This is the next beat to mine, Pat. So you'll have to go to the police box that covers it. Turn right along Meerschaum Street and then... I'm sorry. So sorry. Oh, Constable. I just wanted just that one night to take my Patricia out for dinner. Oh, Rolly. Just that one night. You knew that if the incident was on your beat, your evening of celebration would be ruined. And so you decided to move the entire crime scene outside your jurisdiction. Just across the street to the east pavement of Briar Road, which falls under the neighboring beat's care. You see, I thought... Well, I was sure the victim was dead, you see. I beg your pardon? Oh, of course he did. Otherwise, Mr. Rowley would never have left the poor woman on the freezing cold pavement. I see your meaning now. But God got me back for my sins, didn't he? That's why I missed the rose I bought for Pat. Oh no, Rolly, that was all my fault. I should never have dropped it in such a dark place. So sorry, Rolly. And can you tell us, Constable? How many books did you move from the one side of the road to the other in total? Oh, 4 it was. Yes, sir, definitely. 4. Yeah, it's like the whole courtroom was kind of like tearing up or whatever, and then Ryosuke is like, I'm the lawyer, and I do the lawyer thing. Gotcha! 3 of them dropped by Mr. Natsume in the 4th, being the one that fell from the victim upstairs in the Garrett household, of course. But what made you place that book in the victim's hand? When all the others were scattered haphazardly around, I mean. Also, that's because that's how I found it. How you found it? What do you mean? Well, when we first ran over to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand. You sure it was this book, The Lion's Pride, that the victim was holding? Yes, sir, no doubt about it, sir. Interesting. Fourth book's information has been updated in the court record. I thought it was an open and shut case at the time, you see. There were only the 2 people at the scene, and Pat and me both saw it happen. However, which way you looked at it, it had to be the fellow who ran off who done it, I thought. I couldn't see the harm, really. I didn't think moving it all over the road would make a jot of difference. I suppose this is it for me now. I've had it. My lord? Yes, Lord Van Zykes. I believe that concludes the cross-examination of the witness. Constable, you may withdraw. Yes, sir. Mr. Prosecutor, sir, what will become of my Rolly? What will happen to him? I'm going to prosecute him, of course. No, Van Zykes only bothers with who knows what at this point. He's only supposed to only bother with the worst of the worst, but like this is not a worst of the worst case, so I don't know what he's bothering with at the moment. For now, you're free to go home. The police will contact you in due course. Please don't punish my husband. This was all my fault. It's because I'm always moaning at him for coming home late. Leave it now, Pat. Let's go home. I'm tired. Then, my love. One last thing, Constable. Sir, let this be a lesson to you. In a criminal investigation, every detail matters, however insignificant it may seem to you. Yes, carve that lesson into your mind. And never again make the mistake of tampering with the scene of a crime. Never again, sir? You mean to say that there will be an again? Leave now. This trial is not yet over. Sir! Startling revelation, I must say. Whoever thought of a third party transplanting the entire scene of the crime like that? Indeed, my lord, and nevertheless, there are some immutable facts here, principally that the accused, Mr. Soseki Natsume, is the only person who could possibly have committed this crime. No, I disagree. Now that we know the true scene of the incident, there is someone else. Another person who could be responsible for the knife in the victim's back. Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I believe that the prosecution is probably well aware of this possibility already. Lord Van Zykes, is this true? Very well. Name the person if you will, and if further investigation is warranted, the prosecution has no objection to the trial continuing. You will name this other person who could have perpetrated the crime. The problem is, I think I had this again. I thought that the Shakespearean actor guy was who perpetrated the crime, and he's not on this list, is he? Correct. Okay, so Susato probably not. He wasn't there, as far as we know. He's like Gumshoe. He's the accused. That would be lame. Supposed to pick another person besides him, so it would be guaranteed wrong. Not the right kind of character. Yes. Yes. Not the right kind of character. We're not that far, not that point in the game yet. Suicide, stabbing yourself in the back. We sent him home. So which one? Which Garadeb? I'm gonna go with the easier choice. We have 2 pieces of health left. Okay, the music stopped, that's good. The defense would once again like to request the cross-examination of a new witness, my lord. Once again? My assistant made the same request earlier. In order to finally reveal the truth about this case, it's imperative that we cross-examine juror number 4, Mrs. Joanne Garadeb. Me? Oh, dearie me.
Objection!
That request has already been denied. But the situation is very different now. Mrs. Garadeb, answer me this. What do you want now, you little toad? You're just gonna go for it anyway. At the time of the incident, you were engaged in a violent argument with your husband, Mr. John Garadeb. In the course of the argument, a minor house fire was ignited. And to clear the smoke from the room, your husband opened the window that looked out over Briar Road. Well, what of it? You threw this book at your husband when he was cornered with his back against the window. Upon striking the pane of the open top hinge casement window, the book plummeted directly down. Finding its way to what we now know to be the true crime scene of the incident. Yes, and as I said, what of it? During the argument, you were beside yourself with rage. As such, you threw not just books, but anything you could lay your hands on. So, let me ask you one more time, Mrs. Garrett. This knife, the one removed from the victim's back, have you really never laid eyes on it before? She tried to throw a knife at Mr. Garrett. I don't recall it. Seriously? Am I supposed to remember everything I picked up and threw at my husband? And anyway, the man over there is all the regalia said that members of the jury needn't testify, didn't he? Convenient, yes.
Objection!
Conveniently, yes. No, I have no recollection of saying that at all. Juror number 4. Oh. Make no mistake, you jurors are not special in any way. You're not immune to the judicial process. If you know something about this knife, madame, let the truth come out. But that's just a common or garden knife. It could have come from anywhere. We have several like that at home. If one went missing, how would you expect me to know? Well, you have several of them at home. That means something in itself, doesn't it? What's that? Are you joking? What are you saying, please, Mrs. Garrett? Now you listen to me. I refuse to believe all this nonsense. I couldn't bear the thought that I'd injured someone. Do you hear? I couldn't bear it. Oh, the poor woman. But she did, though. Ah, yes, I want evidence. I want to see hard evidence if you're going to insist on this being my fault. You're going to have to prove to me that I threw that knife, if that's what you think. Come along now, chop chop. Do your worst. Well, Mr. Naruhodo, if I had evidence like that, believe me, I would have thrown it at her already. Then take the stand, juror. Oh. So we can cross-examine you and then use that. The prosecution does not object to the defense's request to cross-examine this woman. Thank you, Lord Van Zykes. I'm going to have to testify? Juror number 4. As I am sure you will appreciate having observed it with your own eyes today. Witness testimony can lead to the most extraordinary truths being unearthed. Truths of which the witnesses themselves may not even have been aware. Oh, dearie me. So I demand your full and unadulterated testimony, Mrs. Garrett. And mark my words, in this court of law today, we shall extract the truth. Using the truth extractor machine. Do you concur, counsels? Certainly, my lord. That's what I'm hoping for, my lord. This is such a strange feeling. For the first time since arriving in this country, it actually feels real. I'm here in the Old Bailey, and I'm a lawyer. Witness, state your name and occupation. Oh, yes, my name is Joanne Garrett, and I'm, I'm a juror and such like. It sounds like even she doesn't know if she's a housewife or a maid, or what anymore. The court has decided your testimony is required in order to clarify matters in this case. Do you understand, madame? Yes, my lord. You will tell the court everything that took place in your household on the evening in question. And I warn you, do not attempt to hide the truth. Oh dearie me. Chin up, Joanne. Nothing to worry about now. Oh, I didn't know you were here, John. I'm here to contort things. Wasn't only you in the room that day, old thing, was it? Rather think I ought to testify as well, don't you? What about your knee, dear? Don't you worry about that. Hardly notice it. I'm not the sort of chap to leave a comrade to face disciplinary action alone. Oh, John. I presume you are Mr. John Garadeb. Yes, sir. Former Second Lieutenant of the 3rd Regiment of the 4th Numberland Fusiliers, sir. Seen my fair share of action and now living the quiet life, as it were. The quiet life? Were you not engaged in incendiary battle with your spouse on the day in question? Oh, well, yes, I am quite. I believe this may represent a first in the proud history of the British court. Calling a juror to the witness stand is unprecedented. However, the court will hear your testimony now, juror number 4, and that of your husband. You will recount clearly and concisely the events in your home on the time of the incident in question. Sir, at once. Battle of Garadeb. Yes, on the day you're referring to, the wife and I did have a bit of a skirmish. Can't recall the reason now. Knocked the candlestick over and set fire to the carpet. Soon had it out, though, and got the window open. Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could find to throw at him. Plenty of knives around our place. Can't say I noticed if one or two went missing, I'm afraid. If that bally thing in the victim's back really was one of ours, you'll have a job proving it, I think. So they're just like, yeah, it could have been us, but like, I mean, good luck, you can't prove it, so we're good. Wow. It sounds as though it was quite the battlefield in your household that evening. Although, an entirely one-sided assault, it seems. The enemy caught us on the hop, sir. Had no choice but to dig in and take defensive measures. To be honest, if the enemy had kept shelling us for another minute, we'd have been toast. Of course, a veteran such as myself is only too aware that on every battlefield, you're just a gnat, whisker from death at any moment. Are we still talking about a marital quarrel here? Yes. Well, I must say, I'm dubious that this testimony will shed any light on the origins of this jackknife. In combat, one's focus narrows such that surroundings are barely noticed. When witnesses may not be able to offer anything more than they have testified. These witnesses may not be able to offer anything more than they have testified already. This may be a dead end. Van Zykes may well be right. However, that's not how this game works. Well, whatever the chances, we only have this last cross-examination to uncover the truth, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, I'm afraid so. Very well, counsel. Bring your cross-examination. Yes, on the day you're referring to, the wife and I did have a bit of a skirmish. Can't recall the reason now. We're going to talk about the reason, I presume. The reason is what you told us yesterday, I believe. Yes, that's right. If I remember correctly, it all started because of a note that was stuck into the pages of a book belonging to Mr. Garadeb. A rather passionate note, in fact. When Mrs. Garadeb found the note, discovering her husband's little secret, and she gave him a mighty number of slaps across the face for it, too. What a sordid state of affairs. Hell on earth. I say, when a chap says he can't recall such things, it's common decency to not drag it all up. And besides, half of that was wide of the mark anyway. A likely story. These waters run very deep. And what transpired next after these multiple blows to the face? Knocked the candlestick over and set fire to the carpet, soon had it out though and got the window open.
Hold it!
And the fire also spread to some items of furniture, didn't it? The bookcase, my armchair, anything of mine, really. Just so happened that there was some bathwater around that evening, so I sloshed that about to put it out. A most precarious situation to put yourself in. Ours is a 3-story townhouse on the west side of the street, where the water's main isn't connected yet. Have to draw water from a public water pump during the day if you need any, you see. The lodgers are always moaning that they can't get any water at night. Although that little mustached Japanese man buys water in bottles, I believe. The defense, Mr. Natsume, you mean? Defendant. Yes, he receives a stipend for his studies, you know, from his home country. Can you imagine being able to brew a pot of tea at all hours? He's obviously very well off. Have you actually seen the state of the man? I believe he uses all his income to buy books. Well, anyway, the point is, I was able to douse the fire with water, fortunately enough. Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could find to throw at him.
Hold it!
Even though the room was on fire? As far as I was concerned at the time, it was more important to extinguish my anger than the flames. When a woman wants to throw, she must throw. That is most certainly not true of a Susato takedown, Mr. Naruhodo. How did she know I was thinking that? So, please catch your mind back and try to remember. Was a knife among the items that you threw at your husband that day? In all honesty, I don't recall. But I feel I must point out that I'm no monster. Let me see. Some bread, cabbage, garlic, a towel, a sponge.
Jupiter! Excuse me.
Do you have something to add, sir? Mr. Garadeb. Don't shoot. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Did your wife's remark just now bring something to your mind? Nothing of any significance, no. Just that the barrage of projectiles the old thing launched in my direction was somewhat more solid than she implies. Books, bricks, and a fire poker, I seem to recall. Ouch. And the woman's aim is uncanny. Good grief, when we're not at home now, this is a court of law. He landed a direct hit with every volley. Okay. Oh, dearie me, ever so sorry, dear. What's she even doing with a teapot in here? Honestly, John, I would never have thrown such things at you, obviously. Well, take a look at this then. How do you suppose that happened, huh? Your pipe, sir? Had this thing in my hand as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out of knocked it clean out with one of her soft projectiles she did, yes. And when I went to pick the thing up, it was broken in two. I'd like to see a sponge do that sort of damage. I see, your pipe was broken. It would never have been sent flying unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Anyway, I've managed to bandage the thing up for now. Oh, you're one to exaggerate, aren't you, dear? I wonder what we should make of this account. It's always important. The defense believes Mr. Garadeb's remarks just now to be of great significance. This war veteran's words only tell us one thing. Betray a fiery wife, and pipes, as well as hearts, may be broken. Sentimental wisdom, perhaps, but hardly worthy of adding to the formal testimony. Indeed, common sense, one might say. Might one? In that case, wouldn't you at least permit us to examine the pipe, sir? Well, I don't see why not. Oh, dearie me, there you go again, trying to ingratiate yourself with a young lady. Very well, the court will accept the gentleman's pipe as evidence. The pipe has been entered into the court record. I hope I didn't speak out of turn, Mr. Naruhodo. I was just feeling rather disappointed for you that your request was turned down. Oh no, it's fine. Thanks to Susato-san, we have some new evidence to work with. We should examine it carefully. Well, thank you for that rebuttal, Mr. Garadeb. Now, if you could return to the crux of the matter. Looks to be in the sorry state with that bandage around. Sorry state with that bandage around it, doesn't it? But for some reason, it feels slightly ominous to me. It's like trying to shout out a warning. Probably because it's the same blue as Mr. Garredev's dressing gown. Miss. I suppose it must have considerable sentimental value to Mr. Garredev, given that he's gone the trouble of repairing it like this. Either way, if he can't afford to replace it. Small nick out of the bowl here, look. It appears to have been made relatively recently. And see how there is little scrapes and dents all over it. It's clearly a well-loved pipe. Yes, you're right. It seems to me recently that being well-loved goes hand in hand with getting some battle scars. This particular nick is catching my eye, though, because it's clearly new. Oh, something just twinkled inside the chamber of the pipe here. Yes, I saw it. Don't you put, like, plants in the pipe, though? Something stuck in there, I think. Let's turn it over and give it a shake. Well, what's this? It's a tiny fragment of metal. It looks like the tip of a blade or something. The tip of a blade? Surely it couldn't be. Okay. I think that's what we wanted. What can you tell the court about the knife used to attack the victim? Plenty of knives around our place. Can't say I noticed one or two went missing, I'm afraid. Sorry, would you care to elaborate? Nothing to say, really. Rather partial to a spot of carving, you see. Pipes and whatnot. Fishing tackle, you know the sort of thing. It's a passion we both share. I like to carve little wooden trinkets too. And then there's my leather work. Sorry to say we're always losing knives around the place, and we have dozens of the things. They sell them at the market sometimes, 20 for the price of 19. Needless to say, I snapped them up. John prefers to use 2 knives at meal times too, instead of a knife and fork. Now, Joanne, we don't want people thinking I'm some sort of savage. Here we go again with the scaldings. Why are they being so evasive? I imagine it's because they don't want to believe it. They can't bear the thought that it might have been one of their knives that injured the victim. Which is entirely understandable, of course, but still. Go on with your testimony, witnesses. Sir. If that bally thing is in the victim's back really was one of ours, you have a job proving it, I think.
Hold it!
You have no intention of admitting it was your knife unless we can produce proof. Even though there is no other credible possibility if Mr. Natsume is innocent.
Objection!
Well, that's just if Natsume is innocent. You forget, my friend, that it is yet to be established that the accused is not responsible for the attack. As if I could forget. If only there was some way to know who had handled the knife. I suppose wizardly like that is just a dream. Perhaps you're thinking of fingerprinting, Mr. Naruhodo. Well, you mean it's not a dream? That sort of wizardry really exists? Whenever people touch anything, they leave behind a unique pattern from their skin, or so they say. But I can't see anything. There are already countries in the world where these so-called fingerprints can be used as evidence. Lord Strongheart is currently discussing the matter at the Ministry of Justice. Yes, I believe we are rapidly approaching an era of scientific methods of investigation. But for now, we shall have to find an alternative method of proving our assertion. What's her face? Who's Lana's little sister? Emma hasn't even been born yet. That knife found in the victim's back was originally in Mr. and Mrs. Garredip's house. If only I could transplant this whole incident to several years in the future. That's meta. That's the extent of their testimony, is it? What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? Well, I think we've heard all of this before, to be honest. I can't say I'm particularly confident that we'll be able to prove anything new from this testimony. But in this cross-examination, it's absolutely essential that we establish how this knife came to be at the scene of the incident. Yes, I know. I'm sure both of them must be feeling very worried. Worried that it was in fact a knife belonging to one of them that caused the victim's injury. If we could find even a tiny shred of evidence to support that theory, it would clinch this trial for us. It would explain everything. Okay, here we go. Okay. Knocked a candlestick over, set fire to the carpet. That's correct. Plenty of knives around our place. Can't say I noticed one or two went missing, I'm afraid. The only thing in the victim's back really was one of ours. You'll have a job proving it, I think. Oh, I accidentally, like... I go the alternative route. Press this. I was really most restrained. The majority of them barely hit John. He's my husband, after all. I see, Mr. Garredib. Your thoughtfulness and consideration for your spouse is apparent. What about you, Mr. Garredib? Do you remember what your wife threw at you? Well, I recall The Lion's Pride, of course. Jolly good book, only just purchased it, too. And jolly good book for burning, it seems. That was a dashed awful scene on the battlefield, I can tell you. Flames everywhere, smoke billowing, couldn't see a bully thing, really. I dare say I wouldn't even have noticed the knife bouncing off the old bones. I don't think they tend to bounce, certainly, actually. Well, he'll do it.
Objection!
Good, the music stopped. It's always like a relief. Mr. Garredib, could I ask you to take a good look at this, please? You can ask, but I can't see a ball or thing. You can't? Used to call me Dead-Eye Deb back in the regiment, of course, but that was some time ago now. Even when I'm trying to enjoy a large print book by the fire these days. I struggle to tell a B from a D and a P from a Q, to be honest. Oh, he does, dearie me. It's rather wearing being asked about every other letter and every other word. You mustn't D very dizzy. I mean, don't you recognize it from the word shape? If I could recognize D's from B's and P's from Q's, I could still read easily. What is that? A tiny scrap of metal? Yes, almost certainly from the tip of a blade. And what may appear to be, at first, to be just a tiny scrap, is in fact a crucial piece of evidence. Interesting. And where did the defense come by this evidence? It was lodged in the chamber of Mr. Garredib's pipe. My pipe, you say? By Jove, I wonder how that got there. And what precisely does this fragment of metal signify, Counsel? Oh, we're gonna find This is left behind inside the victim. Huh? Are you? Oh, because that's from. Oh, are you suggesting that it is in some way related to the matter of the stabbing on Sbriar Road? Yes, I am. What? When put together with another piece of evidence already in the court record, I believe this tiny fragment of metal will unravel the truth of this case, my lord. You appear rather confident in that extraordinary statement, counsel. Very well then, present the pertinent evidence to the court. What evidence then, paired with this fragment of metal, allegedly reveals the truth of this entire case? And that is this. I'll examine it just to pop it out, but it's the tip missing. Okay. Who's
Take
it?
that!
This is the knife that was found in the victim's back. If you look closely, you will see that there is a small piece of the tip of the blade that is missing. A common issue with the inferior blade sold at unsavory street markets. Criminals who use them regularly leave the tips lodged in their victims' bones. And what of this particular knife? No doubt its tip has suffered a similar fate, now languishing somewhere near the spine of the victim.
Objection!
No, that's not the case. The tip of this particular knife blade is the very fragment of metal we discovered in the chamber of Mr. Garrideb's pipe. How convenient. Good grief, Lord Van Zykes. I don't believe it. The knife from the crime scene and this fragment of metal are a perfect match. Good. Order! 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 Is this some kind of Eastern sorcery? This is no magic, my lord. This is a miracle. A miracle? So Van Zykes has figured it out, has he? Counsel, explain this extraordinary coincidence at once. Yes, my lord. The crucial point we have to ask ourselves here is when did the fragment of metal find its way inside Mr. Garrideb's pipe? Something that was clarified for us in the most recent witness testimony. I had this thing in my hand as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out with one of her soft projectiles, she did, yes. It would never have been sent flying unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Oh, dearie me. During the argument between these two that occurred just as the victim was on the pavement below, Mrs. Garrideb flung this knife at her husband. However, the knife missed Mr. Garrideb, instead of striking the pipe in his hand at the time, which caused the tip to break off, of course. Good lord. Yes, and that is when the tip of the blade found its way inside Mr. Garrideb's pipe. The chances of that are 1,000,000 to 1. Mental guts comes up again. And yet there is no other credible explanation for how the tip of the blade ended up in your pipe. Then after losing its tip, the knife ricocheted off the pipe and flew out of the open window. In short, this knife, which fell from the window of the Garrideb's house, is the very same knife that struck the victim in the middle of the back on the street below. And how it hit her in the back, like in the back, because she was leaning over to bend down to pick up the book, The Lion's Pride. Exactly.
Objection!
A full-bodied theory, I'll give you that. A complex bouquet of seemingly trivial points plausibly arranged to create an almost passable vintage. Allow me to toast my learned friend's characteristically
characteristically Japanese approach to bottling his argument. Sorry? But after all, it is just a theory. The bottle life here is corked. Because you see, it's spoiled by an insurmountable inconsistency. An insurmountable? What? You haven't even heard it yet. Van Sykes, explain yourself. What is the inconsistency you claim to have identified? An inconsistency of the simplest nature, my lord. The victim was found with a knife planted in the middle of her back. Yes, in her... That's right, you silly little man. Now, Joanne, old thing, what are you getting so excited about? Let's consider the basic facts of the case once more. The victim was walking along the pavement before being stabbed in the back and falling to the ground. If the knife that struck her had fallen from above, there's no possible way it could have planted itself into the victim's back. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words, for some reason, really hurt me. They plunge me backwards and make me smash my back against the furniture. Quite right, you see. That's exactly right. If the knife had fallen on her from above, it would have struck her on the top of her head. Well, He's lost her words, look. I knew it. I never liked his theory in the first place. I don't know, though. What really did happen? It would appear the defense has made rather a spectacular blunder. It's way overblown, though. In a theory, if a theory has even one inconsistency, it cannot stand. Your theory, my learned friend, is history. They're making such a big deal about this. Oh, like, why? This is like the stupid thing about Ace Attorney. No, I don't care. You simply need to eliminate that one inconsistency and the theory will stand. Mr. Sato. You mustn't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. You were just caught off guard, that's all. And your mind went blank. But if the path you are on is indeed correct, then a way will present itself. The key to this is in the court record, I'm sure. The information you need is there.
Seems you have nothing to say, my friend. Well, your silence speaks volumes. A tacit acceptance of that your theory is fatally flawed.
Objection!
That's not for your objection face. The knife fell on the victim from above. There's no way it could have hit her in the middle of her back. Under normal circumstances, that is. What are you implying? Counsel? There is a piece of evidence in the court record that can explain this inconsistency. That can explain how the knife that fell from above could have pierced the victim's back. We already have the answer. Utter madness. Surely this must be the last time. Oh, come on. Counsel, present the evidence of which you speak. It's a long time in coming just to do this one simple present. Finally.
Take that!
Fourth book found at the scene. This is the final piece of evidence the defense will present. A burnt book? Is that not Mr. Garadev's book? Yes, and to understand its significance, we have to consider how it came to be at the scene in the first place. This photographic print clearly shows the book in question, and that the victim is holding it in her hand. But as we all know, it was the police constable that put the book between her fingers like that. Quite so, as part of his wholesale transplanting of the crime scene to the opposite side of the road. That's true. However, as part of his testimony, Constable Beat made an extremely enlightening statement on that point. That's because that's how I found it. When I first ran over to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So, when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand. In other words, the victim had already picked the book up of her own volition. And clearly, that must have been before she suffered the knife wound. Oh well, I should say so. Well, after being attacked with a knife, I don't imagine she'd have been doing much of anything. So the question becomes, why did the victim have that book in her hand? By jingo! I think I'm beginning to see what may have happened now. Oh dearie me. We know that the book fell from the top floor of the Gerda household onto the pavement below, at precisely the moment that the victim was walking past. Yes, at exactly that moment. The young woman was walking along the street in the light fog, when all of a sudden, a book fell right in front of her. The book I threw. Yes, Mrs. Garrett, and what do you think the woman did? What would you do if you were walking along and suddenly a book landed right in front of you on the pavement? Well, I really can't imagine it, but I suppose she might have reached down and picked the book up. Yes, that is exactly what the woman in fact did. She picked up the book. Oh heavens, oops. And when the woman reached down to pick the fallen book up, what position would her back have been in? That's right, facing the sky, completely and utterly defenseless. Then, in the very next moment, while the woman was bent over, picking up the book, the next object fell from the room above, the jackknife, straight into the middle of her back. And at that same time, walking by chance directly behind Miss Green, was the defendant, Mr. Soseki Natsume. Well, It appeared to Mr. Natsume that the woman simply collapsed on the floor. In the dark and the fog, he didn't see the knife falling on her from above. And from the other direction, the constable and his wife saw no one but the victim and her apparent attacker. So there was never a real culprit to run from the scene in the first place. No, this was nothing more than a series of unlikely events that culminated in an unfortunate accident. And that is the real truth behind this case. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Garadeb, each time you show me that knife, I have my suspicions. I wondered if perhaps it might have been something like that. There, old bean. Poor Mrs. Garadeb. She threw a knife at her husband. What are we saying poor about? Of course, I never meant for anything of the sort to happen, but it was all my fault, wasn't it? I totally did not mean to run my husband through with a knife. I take full responsibility. I let my anger get the better of me. I threw that book. And I threw the knife as well. John, dear. It's alright, I know. I'm ever so sorry. Truly. Breakdown, I'm sorry. Zykes, what news to Mrs. Garadeb? She's been taken to the infirmary. It would appear that today's events had left her in a especially flustered state. However, I believe she will recover in due course. There is no cause for concern. Yes, unbeknownst to themselves, they caused what could easily have been a terrible tragedy. They shall have to prepare themselves for the consequences of their actions. There is some good news, however, my lord. I have just had word with the hospital where the victim is being treated. Her condition is improving steadily, and the doctors believe she'll regain consciousness soon. It's strange. We've been talking about the victim all this time, but we've never once met her. How wonderful! The woman is out of danger, it seems. Yes, that is good news. Is she gonna just die at the next case? So, Mr. Soseki Natsume. Yes. On behalf of my fellow countrymen, I would like to take this opportunity to beg your pardon, sir. The jury hasn't decided on anything yet. You come from your distant eastern homeland to study our great British culture, and have been repaid with immeasurable unkindness. Please accept our heartfelt apologies. Well, what do you expect, Judge? I mean, someone fell dead right in front of him with a knife in her back. Who would you would have thought did it? No, it is me who should be begging your pardon. Oh no, Mr. Natsume? That evening, when the young woman just collapsed on the pavement before my eyes, I jumped to the wrong conclusion again, in my confusion. What conclusion, sir? I was sure that the woman was dead. Yes, Constable Beat said the same thing, didn't he? He thought she had been killed too. I suppose she must have looked completely lifeless. It's been almost a year since I arrived in Great Britain now, but I can't seem to get used to life here. I can't relax. I'm sure there are evil spirits lurking in the fog, like they're haunting me. Poor Soseki-san. His imagination really has got the better of him. Yes, poor man. So, when it happened, I thought the young woman had been taken by the fog spirits. I should never have dropped my books like that and run away. I should have called for help, for a doctor, for the police. Instead, I've managed to create a rift in the relationship of trust between our two empires. And for that, I am truly sorry. One could indeed say that some sort of mischievous spirit has been at work here, I think. One that created a chain of unfortunate mishaps. We were befooled by this spirit and led to false conclusions. But thanks to Lord Van Zykes and our young lawyer here from the east, that chain has now been broken and the spirit exorcised. I heartily commend you both. Oh. Now then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Yes, my lord. In concluding this trial, I must ask one last time for your decision regarding the defendant's culpability, even though I seem to have already come to that conclusion by my previous words. Are you ready to present your findings to the court? As the foreman of the jury, I can assure you we've reached a fair and just conclusion. So I do declare the truth can be extremely cruel at times. Well, I didn't suspect the woman next to me, that's for sure. Sitting in for the old bean while she's out of action, you know, but I know what her decision would be. Does this mean I'll finally be able to get out of here and start work? Well, it's about time. I say I'll have a corker of a story to tell the grandchildren when I get home, won't I? Very well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I hereby demand your final decisions. Mr. Foreman?
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Those voice actors were definitely doubling or tripling or quadrupling. Very well, Mr. Soseki Natsume, I hereby pronounce you not guilty. And finally, Mr. Natsume. Yes, my lord, sir? You are now a free man once more. It is my hope that you will continue to further your education in British culture. And may you never again be brought before me. Oh, yes, sir. Of course. All my life, I swear I'll never set foot in a courtroom again. I'm transported to tears. Thank you, counsels. Court is adjourned. Welcome. Wait, you mean me? Of course! Is there another locum here? Is there even one? Compared to the original locum student, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, your name has become rather short, hasn't it? What's wrong with using my actual name? Oh, at last. I'm free, I'm free. Huh? Joyful, joyous, jubilant jubilation. Heady, hearty happiness, hurrah. Oh, I am pleased. Mr. Natsume is delighted. Would it be so hard just to say that, then? Locum, you did it. You saved me from the brink. Well, what happened to the poor woman was in no way your fault after all. I'm just glad everyone can see that now. No, not that. Lovely, loyal locum lawyer. Yes. I mean, as I said before, I have just never got used to life here in Great Britain. Every time I look over my shoulder, I see foreigners. I see towering brick buildings. And from high up windows, I see them looking down on me, laughing. Look at that little hunchback. Oh dear, I'm sure it's all in your head, Mr. Natsume. But today, you locum lawyer gave me gloom to boot. You stood firm behind that baronial bench before all those babbling British. You battled to the bitter end and laying bare the baffling truth. And when I beheld the blinding fireworks among the beams of the Bailey's roof, I bellowed, "Behold the best barrister ever born." Well, that's very flattering, and we're very pleased for you. This has given me a wonderful anecdote to recount to my old friends back in Japan. And an anecdote? Is that what's become of all my hard work? And there you are, my dear fellows. I apologize for keeping you waiting. I rose late this morning. Oh, Mr. Sholmes, what a pleasure to see you. I see I am here not a moment too soon. Disaster has been averted, I'm glad to say. Oh. The trial shall begin presently, Mr. Naruhodo, and I wish you the very best of luck. It's just finished. What? No, then my haste was in vain? Ah, it's you. Hairlock Sholmes. Oh, have we met, sir? This is Mr. Natsume, the man you had arrested, Mr. Sholmes. Ah, I see. I failed to recognize you at first. Our previous encounters have taken place in the gloom, either of your bleak lodgings or that prison cell. I simply couldn't place that curious face in the light. Charming. This is all your fault, Hairlock Sholmes. You're the reason I had to go through this terrible ordeal. I'm going to give you a piece of my mind. My apologies, sir, but I assure you, I have placed you now. You're the fellow who abandoned that poor young lady and ran off, are you not? Had she been taken to the hospital more urgently, I feel perhaps she would have regained consciousness by now. Oh. But it was unavoidable, I'm sure. We are but human after all. Anyone would have been shaken by such an experience. I do feel very badly about how I behaved. Well, never mind. Now then, what was it that you wanted to say to me, sir? Nothing. Ha 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 ha. Priceless. Oh, I am sorry, really, but that was quite priceless. Poor Soseki-san. Still, on the bright side, you've had an extremely entertaining experience without paying a penny. And it would seem you were not even found guilty. But there is no bright side. Whatever do you mean, Mr. Natsume? Even after this, I'm still cursed by the spirits and now by the Reaper. Ah, Lord Van Zykes. I haven't forgotten, you know, what facing that man in court means. Even if you're found not guilty, you're still doomed. It will all be alright. It'll all be alright, Mr. Natsume. Hmm? If the Reaper appears trying to make trouble, I'll protect you. It's a perfectly executed Susato takedown. You just throw Mr. Van Zykes? I'd like to see that, actually. Much as I like being tortured on my head, turned on my head, a bit of warning might be nice next time, Miss Susato. Mr. Natsume, what do you intend to do now? You mentioned something about recounting your experiences to your friends back in Japan. Yes, I intend to return to my homeland soon. Oh. It has already been a year since I arrived here in Great Britain. I visited universities, libraries, bookshops. I've been honored with the tutelage of professors. I've learned so much about the wealth of literature here and the city it has shaped. And I've come to realize it is my calling to sail home and tell my fellow countrymen about it. That's very touching, Mr. Natsume. Oh, in perhaps less veiled terms. You wish to withdraw halfway around the world to escape the terror of the Reaper's curse. That's not it at all! The more I learn of literature, the more this strange feeling claws at my insides. I feel compelled to return to my roots and attempt to pen a work of my own. Oh, I see. A work of literature by Soseki-san. Could be an interesting read. And what about Mrs. Susato and yourself, Mr. Naruhodo? Sorry, what about us? Will you return to Japan alongside your mustached compatriot? Why would we? A week has not yet passed since we arrived in London. And only now does it feel as though we have finally found our feet. And you are accommodated in a hotel at present, are you not? That's right, but we need to find lodgings before it bankrupts us. I've calculated that we can only afford another 10 nights before our entire budget is exhausted. Well then, you could take my lodgings. The windowless room? But what it lacks in windows, it more than makes up for, with a floor, a ceiling, and walls. Great. And of course, I'd be happy to leave behind the accursed evil spirit. Oh my, an evil spirit. Oh yes, it tries to suffocate you while you sleep. It's called sleep apnea. An infallible wake-up call. Well, think about it, if that's alright. Perhaps I can offer a more welcome alternative. Would you consider taking lodging with me? Really? Well, a vacancy has conveniently presented itself. Though it is up in the attic, I might add. Are you sure it isn't just a storage loft? I spoke with the landlady this very morning on the matter of price, and Iris is cleaning the room as we speak. You must come at once. I presume you have no luggage to speak of? Oh, this is simply wonderful. What an honor. I'll be invited to taking lodgings in the Great Detective's office's attic. I'm too overcome for words. So suggesting we look elsewhere is out then. Then it's settled. Iris will prepare a welcome dinner this evening. And you must come too, Mr. Natsume. I insist. I don't know what to say, but thank you, and yes. Wonderful. Then I'll go and complete the paperwork for your formal release, Mr. Natsume. It shan't take long. Somebody's happy. To do paperwork. Locum, I knew that you wouldn't let me down. I'm truly delighted to have met you here in London. Likewise, Mr. Natsume, it's been a privilege meeting you two. It's a shame that we're going to have to say goodbye so soon. Well, I've come to realize that I belong to Japan, but Locum will meet again one day. Yes, I'm sure. Too many words, and hopefully by then I'll be a successful lawyer. Hopefully by then I'll be a successful author. Well, my dear fellow, our carriage appears to have arrived. Shall we go, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes, Mr. Sholmes. I have little doubt Mr. Natsume will be released in time for dinner this evening. So, Soseki-san's innocence successfully established, we rode with Mr. Sholmes to what was to become our new home, 221B Baker Street. Okay, there's a little stinger here, but I'm out of time, so... Yeah, I'm way out of time, so I'm gonna just save the game, and just, like, end up kind of not quite finishing the chapter. Too much excess dialogue at the end there. It's a bit wearisome. Ran out of saves. Overwrite save 1.